Ellie adjusted the strap of her paint-streaked bag and sighed as she stepped off the crowded subway. The city was alive with its usual cacophony. Blaring horns, snippets of conversations, the faint strains of a street musician's guitar. Yet to her, it all felt muted, like a painting stripped of its colors. At 23, Ellie had moved to the city with dreams as vibrant as the canvases she once painted. She envisioned gallery openings, art shows, and people marveling at her work. But reality had been far less kind. Months of rejection letters and dwindling commissions had left her doubting if she was even an artist at all. Bills were piling up, and her sketchbook, once a sanctuary, had been untouched for weeks. On this particular gray Tuesday, Ellie wandered aimlessly after her shift at the cafe. She wasn't ready to face her tiny apartment, with its peeling wallpaper and half-finished paintings mocking her from every corner. The streets carried her until she found herself in an unfamiliar neighborhood, where skyscrapers gave way to weathered brownstones and narrow alleys. Turning a corner, she stumbled upon a small park tucked between two apartment buildings. It wasn't like the manicured parks in the city center. This one was wild, almost forgotten. Vines clung stubbornly to a rusted fence, and patches of wildflowers pushed through cracks in the pavement. In the center stood a dilapidated fountain, its stone figures worn smooth by time. Ellie was about to leave when she noticed an older man sitting on a bench, surrounded by pigeons. He wore a threadbare coat and a cap that barely hid his snow-white hair. In his hands, he cradled a small accordion. Before she could slip away unnoticed, he looked up and smiled. "Not many people find their way here," he said, his voice warm and rough like sandpaper. "Sit, if you'd like. The pigeons don't bite." Something about his invitation felt genuine, and Ellie, against her better judgment, sat on the opposite end of the bench. The man began to play a soft, lilting tune. It wasn't polished, but it was heartfelt, the kind of music that wrapped around you like a blanket on a cold night. "You play beautifully," she said after a while. "Thank you," he replied. "I'm Arthur. And you?" "Ellie," she said, offering a faint smile. They sat in companionable silence as the sun dipped lower in the sky. After a while, Arthur spoke again. "You look like someone carrying the weight of the world. What's on your mind?" Ellie hesitated, but something about Arthur made her open up. She told him about her art, her struggles, and the fear that she had made a mistake chasing her dreams. He listened intently, nodding as she poured out her frustrations. When she finished, Arthur chuckled softly. "You remind me of myself," he said. "Years ago, I was a musician, played in big halls, small bars, even on street corners. But life has a way of testing you, doesn't it?" Ellie nodded, her throat tightening. "Let me tell you a secret," he continued. "I used to think happiness came from applause, from people telling me I was good enough. But you know where I found it?" He gestured around the park. "Here, playing for the birds, the trees, and anyone who'd stop to listen. Sometimes happiness isn't where you expect it to be. Sometimes it's in the unexpected." Ellie didn't know how to respond, but his words lingered as they parted ways. That night, for the first time in weeks, she opened her sketchbook. Inspired by Arthur's park, she drew wildly, letting her pencil capture the overgrown beauty and the quiet magic of that forgotten place. She returned to the park the next day, and the day after that. Arthur was always there, playing his accordion, and soon their routine became a lifeline. Ellie began painting again, using the park and its quiet resilience as her muse. Slowly, she rediscovered the joy that had first drawn her to art. Months later, Ellie held her first small exhibition in a neighborhood cafe. Among the pieces was a painting titled The Forgotten Park. Arthur came, his cap slightly askew, and stood before the painting with a grin that reached his eyes. "You found it," he said. "Found what?" Ellie asked. "Happiness," he replied. "In the unexpected." From that moment on, Ellie stopped chasing perfection and began celebrating the unexpected. She realized that even in the chaos of the city, there were quiet corners, hidden parks, and kind strangers who could remind her that happiness often blooms in the unlikeliest of places.